continue where we left off. I think we've had 4 presentations so far, and we have a few more coming, after which we'll then do a Q&A together. So our next presenter is Joe Ado, who is a chairperson of Archi Africa. And Joe is doing something very interesting in a very old part of Accra, which we're looking forward to hear about.
Good, thank
Joe,
you very
karibu.
much. Thank you very much. I'm going to read. I write a blog every morning, so some of you in this audience may have read this already. But I love these conferences, so I wrote a few days ago, good morning, folks. Waking up in Kigali, poring over the conference program, and thinking when all this talking on Africa will improve her condition. And I say to myself, but I'm in the epicenter of all this. Waiting for my flight in Accra yesterday, it's a few days ago now, I bumped into the country manager of Brussels Airlines, who introduced me, and I'm paraphrasing here, to her colleague as, meet Joe. He's an architect and part of the intellectual elite on culture, etc., etc. It sounded so bad. It sounded so detached and pompous, and got me thinking how creativity must be transmitted and rethought. So in Kigali, I'm with all these intellectual types from all over Africa to share our stories. Preparing my presentation and key to stress that I am not an educated intellectual person, and that I am boycotting all such gatherings in the future. Now, this is after when I got an email from Kathleen. I didn't read the whole thing, but I just read the synopsis of what was going to be happening here. And I quickly sent her an email, Kathleen, I want to be part of this. And she said, but of course you are. I run an organization called Archi Africa in Accra. So this video shows our place in the heart of the old city. But the focus of this video will really be on the location that we find ourselves. Most of us know where Ghana is. We're just 5 degrees north of the equator on the flattened part of West Africa along the Atlantic Ocean. And my place, our building, is right on the Atlantic. It's a 1915 warehouse which is surrounded by the oldest places in Accra. We are in Dutch Accra, which is called Asha Town, where the Dutch took slaves to Suriname and all over the world. And then half a mile up is British Accra, which the British took slaves all over the world. Parts of this video will be in our local language, Ga, spoken by the people of Accra. And I did not translate it, but I'm glad I didn't, to punish all of you speaking French in this place. So the video is built around a soundtrack. I often do lectures around popular music of our region, and today I'm using the hip-hop music of a Nigerian songwriter, young songwriter called Victor A.D. And the whole premise of this song is, Africa is hard. I hustle every day to make a living. And if I don't make money, waiting we gain, which means in the patois, what have we gained? In my case, I hustle every day to do what I do, which I love, which is architecture and engaging with my community. But if I don't make it a success, waiting again.
Don't want to take the same step where I take last year, we don't work for me.
This is the coastline.
Memories of this place was 1966. The
volume. We were upstairs in my house, looking as if I told you, of people burning effigies of our first president. That's the first memories I remember from this world.
We don't make money, waiting we get. Waiting we get. Lord, you know what to me, how you don't talk, make it manifesto, Baba. This street now my grace to be who are super say carry festo. Now your grace I take the leave and if you play attack and defense at the same time. And I thank you Lord, say even when I the class, you still give me the talent to give me a pass. When they ring na family they call. If not be billing na something they solve. And how you be, I'm a money is involved. Oh you are blessed because I don't feel all. So much pressure on them figure. I say $1, I still want that 10 figure. I need the kind of money where go back down, but they say who be this black scheme man. You wait on money and you wait till we get. If we don't buy the best, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If we don't get money, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If we don't make money, wait till we get. Wait till we get. This year I want to buy motor. This year I want to buy house. This year I pray make Oluwa no pass me by, cause I pray for grace my G. It's not written that you will find or you seek, but you never find out who she did not seek. How much is deeper than life. It's not for the shallow man that we still there they grind it. When they ring na family they call. If not be billing na something they solve. And how you be, I'm a money is involved. Oluwa bless me cause I know we dollar. So much pressure on them figure. I say $1, I still want that 10 figure. I need it.
Well, many do you know what I was faith in this community or to the Jew or Ghana as a whole. They were present Bola ni achieve sure got and they could be few of Friday can be now broke anyway. How are we going to prevent it from whatever AMO you see, you should put on working on it. No, we control on it. If they say they're going to take it from Tuesday, you have to do it.
If we don't buy the best, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If we don't get money, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If we don't make money, wait till we get. Wait till we get. This year I want to buy motor. This year I want to buy house. This year I pray make Oluwa no pass me by, cause I pray for grace my G. It's not written that you will find or you seek, but you never find out who she did not seek. How much is deeper than life. It's not for the shallow man that we still there they grind it. When they ring na family they call. If not be billing na something they solve. And how you be, I'm a money is involved. Oh you are blessed because I know we dollar. So much pressure on them figure. I say $1, I still want that 10 figure. I need the kind of money where go back down, but they say who be this black scheme man where they worry out. You are not back to me, I want all this money. I want to take this next step where I take last year when I work for me. I work for me, Lord. I saw the strike that they hustle bless me with this money. Run on your hand that day. I say make you run out for me. If you don't make money, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If you don't buy the best, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If you don't get money, wait till we get. Wait till we get. If you don't make money, wait till we get.
So this is the Mystic Cathedral. I didn't know when it was actually there, but in the early 19th century. And my father was the chaplain for many years here. That's the reason why we live at the mission house. I have a great story to share. It must have been 1969 or 1970. I was crossing our carriage path on the other side of the street. And I was crossing this road to go sit in our car when I was knocked down by a motorbike. So this scar, my broken tooth, is testimony of my times in this neighborhood. All these stones were brought from England as ballast for the ships, and then used for the construction of this wonderful cathedral. And so this is a very colonial, your class colonial cathedral of impeccable architectural pedigree.
I need the kind of money where go let down what they say with this black schema.
So one of my first forays in terms of trying to find property to develop was the old CFO building, which is to the right here. And this is where I took an old warehouse, a vintage 40s warehouse owned by the French trading company CFO. So it's just behind this the historic police station on the right. And this is where I began imagining a kind of enclave, a creative enclave. You can see that CFO building. You see that? The warehouse at the end. And so that was my first attempt. Actually, not quite true. This is my second attempt. The first attempt was an old warehouse next to the Bible house. And then I found Jamestown Cafe building. That's when I moved there 6 years ago to develop the new Archi Africa base of galleries and cafe. So we are now nearing the lighthouse, which you can see the red and white building, which is right on the coast, adjacent to the historic Jamestown Harbor. What are you doing? My family also received is a great activist architect, Ghanaian heritage, based in London, and a lover of Damashi.
I am, yes. Actually, English character in particular.
In particular. So also, this is the old Jamestown Harbour, which is the first harbour built in Ghana. This is the first one, and then the British built Sir Gordon Gettysburg built Takoradi Harbour, and that led to the decline in the use of the and the final nail in the coffin for this place was the building of Temahad. So then this place was completely abandoned, and it's become a canoe fishing kind of harbour. And now they're planning an industrial fishing harbour, which is the rendering that you saw earlier. And so I often wonder how the artisanal fishing that has been here for centuries is going to dovetail into the more industrial, as you saw, project, fishing in a real industrial fishing harbour. So we had a radio show about it last week in this very spot, which has been torn down. So it's extraordinary.
Buy moto. This year I want to buy house. This year I pray wanna pass me by, cause I pray for grace, my tree. It's not written that you will find or you seek, but you never find out who you did not seek. How much is deeper than life. It's not for the shallow man that we still they grind. When they ring the family they call them. If not be billing or something.
The Jamestown Cafe concept is a combination of a lot of the influences that we have experienced today, and I wanted to create a place where people can just come and share knowledge and just rest.
Jamestown Cafe ne bia ne fe chake no chua kashi onye jomuko ni ubani okakwa Ghana fe ke ododobi as well.
So this is a view of the Atlantic, and it was a key driver in finding this space where this is going. All the way on the ocean, most of us never experienced the ocean like this. So this starter space was very important in my vision of bringing people to the old city of and experience heritage in a different way. As an architect, I've saw the potential right from the beginning. I live in this neighborhood, and so I understand the visitors, I understand the culture, and of course, the heritage. So Jamestown Cafe, by and large, is a melding of heritage with the contemporary in terms of discourses and knowledge sharing, and of course entertainment, which is a driver for economic sustenance. So this product for me is not about exploring spaces, but rather how do you create an economic engine based around design and culture. So that's what Jamestown Cafe stands for. I'm sitting in my favorite spot in this historic taco house where I can engage with the everyday goings-ons on the sidewalk and see the children and adults alike, and just see the life of the old city. My intention has always been to show by example how one can develop and engage with historic buildings by adding new architecture to it without destroying the old. This fine balance is what we need for on all parts of Ghana, because there's a tendency to tear down the historic buildings. And so some of the most prized, most relevant buildings in Ghana exist here. And what you see across the street is what we are hoping to set another example through redeveloping Taco House. And the renderings which you see coming up, it's the vision of how old and new can come together and redefining Accra. The remote exhibition is sharing stories from Jamestown, which is basically about heritage buildings over the past century plus, and showcasing them as if they were part of the community, which they are. So this is starting May 13th, curated by architect Ian Jackson from Manchester University.
If we don't buy the best, what's it we get? What's it we get? If we don't get money, what's it we get? What's it we get? If we don't make money, what's it we get? What's it we get? Lord, you know what to me, how you don't talk, make you manifesto, Baba. The street now my grace, don't be who are super, they carry festo. Now your grace, I tell you, leave out of the play, I back on the fence, so at the same time. And I thank you, Lord, say even when I the cross, you still give me the talent to give me a pass. When they ring, na family, they call. If not be billing, that's something they solve. And here you be, I'm a money is involved. Oh, you are blessed because I don't figure. So much pressure, they may figure. I say $1, I still want that 10 figure. I need the kind of money where go back down, but they say who be this black.
Thank you very much. In closing, I just want to say, when I saw the video yesterday, because this was sent from the office, although there were so many Europeans in the space, Africans come there too. Because often, what you telegraph is very important, and on that day that he was filming this, so I didn't want, the misconception could be this is a space for foreigners alone. It's a great space where all kinds of people come, from royalty to politicians and Africans. And my favorite two Africans who have used the space, and we've had projects with them, is the Nigerian architect Dimas Mboko, who we should all learn about, and El Anatsui, the Ghanaian-born but Nigerian-inspired. He's ours, please stop that. So we have all kinds of people who come, and you're all welcome to see us in Accra when you're there. And the walk in the neighborhood was really to show that people like me who may appear as outsiders were actually born in the community. And that was my childhood home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. So folks, we'll move right along. I think the next presentation is by Amélie Duffelhart, who is the director of Camp Nagel. Is she here? She's not here. Yes, she is. No, she's not. Okay. Ida Mukolozi from Dar es Salaam, and the organization DARC or DARCH is next. Ida? Yeah, Ida is the CEO of this organization. I've interacted with them a long, long time ago and very impressed by their work. Welcome.
Good afternoon. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be here today and to share with the different initiatives and organizations that have walked the path we are walking today. I'm encouraged to see that we have organizations that are 16 years old, organizations that are 20 years old and over. DARCH is very young. So DARCH is the Dar Center for Architectural Heritage. And we really started operations in 2017, though the organization was conceived in 2014. And the idea was to form a company, a non-profit company, that would aim at saving and promoting architectural heritage through research, documentation, education, professional training, capacity building, community outreach, and public cultural events. So how did the idea come about? Basically, the idea came about because there was a lot of demolitions that were taking place, especially in Dar es Salaam itself. So a few organizations, the co-founders that you see there, got together and said we need to form an organization that can do an intervention to stave the demolitions so that we don't completely lose the identity of the city and the spirit of the city. And as we know, the wider definition of heritage or culture can be in the traditions, in the values, but they can also be encompassed in the buildings that we see, that carry the history of how the city developed. So on the way, we had some associates that were to help along in the journey, a publishing house and an architectural magazine. But then the most important factor was how was the organization going to be launched? And we were lucky during that period that there was a launch for proposals to find programs or projects that looked into particular aspect of culture. So we were able to squeeze in a proposal that was able to fit into that category. What do we mean by architectural heritage? As much as we talk about architecture, but we also focus on a more extended definition. We talk about buildings, open spaces, and monuments. And they all come into place. We are currently located in the oldest building in Dar es Salaam. Now, Dar es Salaam is a very young city. It's actually less than 200 years old. Not dispensing the fact that there was a vibrant fishing village, which is sometimes referred to even today. But we talk about the period when we had the first onset of a different community entering the city. So this building is typically of Omani architecture. And it was first built by the Sultan of Zanzibar, and the son of the Sultan of Zanzibar. It's called the Old Boma, and it currently stands as the oldest building in Dar es Salaam. During his settlement, he actually built 5 buildings. Today, only 2 remain standing. As you can see, there's a sister building next to it that was demolished in 1979, and it was purely from the action of one man from the beginning, who went to court, asked for an injunction, and by the time he got the court order to stop demolition, the adjoining building had already been lost. So today the old Boma stands alone. Okay, sorry, something has happened. Okay, maybe it's a blank slide. Okay. So as I said, we talk about buildings, we talk about open spaces. And open spaces, this is an area that's called Mnazi Mmoja. And it is iconic because when the German colonial era or colonial administration arrived in Dar es Salaam or Tanzania, they actually performed the first master plan of the city. And the city was divided into zones. The area right at the front, hopefully I can use this gadget, maybe not. Anyway, right at the shore is what was the European zone. So that zone was clearly marked out to have only the Europeans living in it. In the following area in the middle was the Asian zone. There was a huge Asian community that was living in Tanzania, and they were assigned that area. Beyond where you see the open space by the intersection, beyond that you had Kariakoo. That was the African zone. So today we still see, architecturally, we still see this imprint of how the CBD was actually divided. As I said, we also look at monuments as part of the city's history and worthy of conservation or protection. What you see on your left is a statue that was put up by the German colonial administration. It's called the von Wissmann statue. And it was toppled when the Germans lost the First World War and the British took over. On your right is the Askari Monument. And the Askari Monument was put up by the British to commemorate the lives of the African soldiers that died fighting next to the British. So I will speak a little bit more about how the monuments also come into the whole fabric of what we feel is important in terms of the history of where the city came from. Recently in social media, about 2 years ago, there was a lot of talk about toppling the Askari and putting one of the local celebrities. He's actually a singer, I'm sure he's well known here. He's called Diamond Platinum. So he is very hardworking man, young man, who made it, so to say, in showbiz. But because of the lack of knowledge or lack of awareness in terms of the history of the city, it was more or less decided this is a good idea. Let's topple the Askari and put Diamond. So this again shows the danger of not having an informed local community. This is our heritage, unfortunately. It is our heritage, and we need to find ways where it is properly known and properly documented. So when Dutch was established, there was a need to have very specific objectives. One was developing models for showcasing architectural heritage. The building I show you, the old Boma, is now used as a showcase building to basically show that a building that's over 160 years old does not need to be neglected and left to just rot. It can be repurposed, restored, and reused. So currently we have a vibrant center that houses exhibitions, that has a permanent exhibition on the history and the development of the city, and has many other different events that I will speak about a bit later. So the idea was to really show the community that these historical monuments can still be useful today, and they can still have applicability today. So the second goal was conducting research and documentation of an urban heritage to contribute to the development of preservation strategies and improved heritage management. So in Tanzania, at least, this is still a subject that's a little under-researched. I don't know about the case in Rwanda and some of the other countries, but when you look for a conservation architect, it's sometimes not easy to find one. So there was a need to not only start creating a base of information, hence the research and documentation, but to also have a center where this information can be accessed. But also because in the partnership you have higher learning institutions, was to see how at universities some of these curriculums can be reviewed so that we're actually targeting future architects and future urban planners to have awareness and to be invested in actually looking at historical buildings not as old relics to be demolished, but as buildings that can be conserved and restored and protected. So it was vitally important to make sure that that body of information was available. Another objective was enhancing heritage-related knowledge on urban heritage and its value. So the public awareness campaigns that we do is to really bring closer the community to the center so that they begin to learn and understand more about the activities that take place. And this ties in with creating cultural heritage tourism to generate income and business. In a lot of situations, I mean, especially in Tanzania, the creative industries, or I'll say the cultural sector, is really yet not seen as a viable industry that can add to the GDP of the country. So the fact that we have tried to create a product that can not only be sold as a tourist product, can also help the community generate income, and eventually this can be reflected in the GDP. And it's one way in which we can get the government's attention, that they need to probably put a bit more focus on this industry that's really not being given its due priority. What is the state of the architectural heritage today? The old Boma, we were able to be given the old Boma in 2015, and that's when restoration work started. And when we acquired it, it actually still belongs to the Dar es Salaam City Council. They're the owners of the building. There were many changes that had been done. You can see on the right-hand side, there were aluminum windows that had been installed. If UNESCO see that, their hairs will stand on end, because the original building did not have aluminum windows, as we all know. And this is one of the important aspects of conservation and restoration work. It is to ensure that you are being faithful to the original architecture. And for the building to reacquire its value, you need to put back the original factors and the original features. So this is what we tried to do with the old Boma. And, sorry. And so this is a night picture. All the windows are now wooden windows, and even in the interior there was drop ceilings and there was partitions. All of that was removed, and it now stands towered by other buildings as that old building that's on so-and-so drive. So it's iconic because it stands literally towered by other skyscrapers around. You can see one immediately behind it. There's another picture where you'll be able to clearly see how the skyline is changing. Secondly, we have examples of buildings that once stood. This is a building that was there in 1967, and the picture on your right is the current building. So this building was completely obliterated and removed, and we have a completely different structure. So this is basically the path that we were on. The fact that buildings were disappearing and being completely changed, and basically we're losing the heritage and the architectural value of the buildings. This is another building that is in the city center. This initially was called the Kaiserhof Hotel, built during the German colonial era. When the British took over, they renamed it as New Africa. That picture is basically how it looked when it was first built. But throughout time, it's been changing. This picture was from 1945. This picture is from 2015. This picture is from 2019. So we can see the progression of how slowly but surely, it's only probably the foundation. That's the only original feature of this structure now. And then of course, on the left you can see how, how the different buildings are also evolving around it. Then we have the third scenario where a building was completely removed from the face of the CBD. This building again was in the city center by a renowned architect who's still living, and unfortunately he had to witness his work of art being demolished over a long weekend with no notice. And on the right there, next to the truck, you see the process of demolition. At the bottom there is the current location. So this was in 2013. Currently, this is what the site has. It has a car park. So it's just a stark reminder of how, without interventional action, these buildings are just changed. This is the current presidential house. It was first the governor's mansion, and there's been alterations, but still there's some remnants of some historical architecture in it. This is the shoreline of Dar es Salaam. In 1860s, when the Omani Sultanate or the Zanzibar Sultanate arrived, he had put up his buildings. The bottom picture is how the skyline is changing. The old Boma is next, just in front of the green building site that you see there. And this is the most recent one. So we can see how the skyline is slowly but surely changing. Some of the activities we do in Dutch, we do walking tours, and these are to really encourage individuals to create a connection with the city by actually seeing some of the buildings. These are some of the tours that we offer. I'll just go very quickly since time. There is a particular exhibition that we did called Impulse Expo's Art Revealing Space. In this particular exhibition, we did installations in the street around particular iconic places. And the idea was to bring exhibitions to the streets, because I think we've all said sometimes it's not easy to bring the community into the spaces that we create where they can interact. So this immediately drew attention. So this particular installation was to show how foreign objects can come into a space and completely change it, and imposing a congruous installation that questioned the use of materials in new buildings that would appear contrary to Dar es Salaam's hot and humid climate. For some of you who've been to Dar es Salaam, you know it's very hot. A lot of the structures that we see are tall, high-rise glasses that are not green in any way. And so we're moving towards another issue of a carbon footprint that we cannot afford. So these are pictures from the installations. They were literally scattered around the streets. So we did raise a few curious eyes and a few curious inquirers, and it was one way to interact and one way to reach the community. Inside the Old Boma, as I said, we have a permanent exhibition. This is a publication. I don't know where okay. This is a publication. I have a few copies for ones who are interested in purchasing. This is a publication of the history and urban space of architecture in Dar es Salaam. We have a permanent exhibition which is summarized in here, as I said. And then also we have temporary exhibition spaces which allows us to extend the conversation a little more wider. So we speak about the city, we speak about the people, we speak about culture, we speak about history. It allows a further interaction. We have school outreach program after we realized that diamond, platinum can replace the Askari monument, there was a need to go to schools and to start actually from the grassroots interacting with the young people who are to continue this legacy. They need to know why they need to protect and save the architecture. So we also do community outreach where we visit organizations or groups that are interested to learn more about what we do. We also have academic discourses and informal settings, again, to have that dialogue and that interaction with the community. Sometimes it's in an informal setting. This is at the rooftop of the old Boma building itself, and it just allows further dialogue and discussion, which we can never have enough of. We're a non-profit organization. We don't have a lot of funding, so sometimes we link up with other institutions that have a similar message or that can complement what we do. So we've worked with the Jane Goodall Institute that does conservation of the environment. We piggyback on their visits to school and talked about conservation of buildings. As I said, we have some publications which help us raise funds for running the organization, but of course we are not without some challenges. Funding, as it has been discussed here, is an immediate and issue all the time. The sustainability of the program, it's not known. We can do with more awareness for the people. We are actively trying to take care of that through the different activities that we do. We could do with more support from the government. I see with some of you, at least you seem to have made more headway with that. In Tanzania, we're really not at a good place. So I was happy to see a member of the government here. We invite them, they don't always show up, but at least it helps them to know. This is how Dar es Salaam looks like today, and really the idea is just to again encourage the dialogue and to bring home the fact that where our city is developing to is a discussion that we need to have as citizens, and it needs to involve all stakeholders. So on that note, I shall end. So as I said, I have a few copies for those who are interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ida. I know it's very difficult for the presenters to try and rush through some really deep and exciting work in 15 minutes, but they're giving it a good go, and I shall keep bothering you with the thing that says 2 minutes and then 0 minutes. Now, I think that we've got 2 more speakers, and we, according to the program, are trying to finish by 6, but also have a conversation. So if I can urge those speakers to stick to their time, it's 5:30 now, so we'll literally be ending at 6, and then I guess the MC will guide us on what to do there. So the next is Vichwa Mwilambwe, who is from Kinshasa. We heard him earlier give a vigorous defense of something that happened in French, which we followed a little bit. But he's from the Kin Art Studio, and I'd like to invite him to.
Thank you.
Karibu. Yeah.
It's better for me. Sorry, I'm trying to. Okay, we don't have more time. I will start right now. Thank you for inviting me here. But I think I'll try to mix language, you know. When I realize that I can speak in English, I'll do that sometime. I think it's better for me to speak more in French. Okay. Okay, great. Nice. Oh. Ouais, je m'appelle Vichwa Mwilambwe Bondo, je suis artiste et en même temps je travaille comme directeur de Kin Art Studio. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes là, on parle sur des questions de l'espace, aussi de l'espace pour l'art, l'espace pour la culture. Et du coup, moi... ok.
Attends 2 secondes, on a juste un peu...
Ok. Ouais. Et du coup, cette question m'a toujours tiqué, ça m'a toujours aussi préoccupé pendant un moment. Non seulement comme artiste, mais aussi un artiste qui vit dans une ville telle que Kinshasa, qui est une ville cosmopolite, qui a au moins plus de 20 millions d'habitants. plus de 20 millions, plus de 15 millions d'habitants aujourd'hui, et du coup, une ville qui a une école d'art, mais qui n'a pas un lieu d'art, un lieu où les artistes pouvaient travailler, un lieu où les artistes pouvaient échanger. Les musées, on peut même pas en parler parce que c'est pas un souci pour nos autorités. Mais moi, comme artiste, après avoir tourné, aller aussi étudier dans d'autres pays en Europe, et précisément quand j'étais à Amsterdam, je passais... I'm sorry, I forget.
I'm going to have to do this at some point.
Okay.
So basically, I'm going to make the long story short. He's from Congo, Kinshasa, and the paradox of Kinshasa being a cosmopolitan town, 15 million inhabitants, is that there is an art school, but there's no art space for practitioners, which is quite a first. No, forget about museum, forget about exhibitions areas. Most of the stuff happens on the street, but there is an art school in Kinshasa.
Ok, en French. Ok, si je parle, il n'y a pas l'espace pour l'art. Je parle plus des arts visuels parce qu'il y a des espaces informels comme notre espace où on fait du théâtre, on fait la musique, il y a beaucoup des espaces pour la musique. Et puis les espaces pour les arts visuels, il y a plus de collectifs d'artistes. Et moi, en 2009, quand j'étais à la Rex Academy, avant même d'aller à la Rex en 2007, la question était, ok, je vais aller à la Rex, mais après la Rex, c'est quoi au juste, c'est quoi la suite?
I'm sorry, c'est quoi la règle?
Yeah, I was saying that in 2007, before to go to the Rex Academy, I was thinking that, yeah, it's good to go at the Rex Academy in Amsterdam, but after the Rex Academy, what is the next?
Oh, the Rex Academy. Okay.
Yeah, Rex Academy.
Okay, so basically he had a personal and professional choice to make, which is, yes, I'm in this great academy, the Rex Academy in Amsterdam, but what's next? So the idea is to go back home and try and import all the knowledge that we have from all these great institutions and experiences and trying to build something back home. I hope I'm doing it right.
Ok, yes. De ramener cette expérience, mais comment ramener cette expérience, pas faire les copies, des copies-collées d'Amsterdam pour Kinshasa, parce que c'est impossible. C'est impossible, pourquoi? Parce qu'on n'a pas de même réalité, et la ville en soi ne fonctionne pas de la même façon, on n'a pas la même culture, et toutes ces questions, je me suis posé par rapport à ça, et quand je fais l'analyse de la scène artistique à Kinshasa, je me suis rendu compte que je dois revisiter cette façon de voir les choses, et comment transcender dans cette idée d'un espace artistique à Kinshasa.
So the problem with coming home with knowledge is we tend to copy-paste the things that we've learned, and you cannot copy-paste Amsterdam to Kinshasa because realities are different, the means are different, that's for sure. So within those questions, you come home trying to, first of all, find out where you are in your professional life, but also how do you fit in with the city that you were born in, but that changes all the time. So it's like trying to put in two pieces together and you're looking for that edge that fits.
Yeah, comme artiste, je me suis dit, qu'est-ce que je peux faire? Ça doit être aussi un engagement dans la scène artistique et en même temps dans ma société où je vis à Kinshasa. Et mon projet artistique, c'était plutôt pas de faire un centre d'art ou un musée ou je sais pas quoi, mais plutôt créer une espèce de laboratoire où les artistes doivent repenser l'art, doivent travailler, doivent se questionner, doivent faire des recherches et puissent les donner cet espace de liberté d'expression, d'entrer en dialogue avec eux-mêmes, avec la création sur le plan local avant de penser global.
So on a local level, that journey gets you to a place where you have to, first of all, talk to the people that you want to do art with and for within the community and together rethink the entire thing. Not just perform or do art, but rethink like a laboratory actually. Yeah. Rethink the entire concept of what are we doing, who are we doing it for, where and how and to what end. So yeah.
Yeah. Et du coup, une autre question était celle-ci. Je rentre à Kinshasa, c'est bon, qu'est-ce que je vais faire? En étant à la Rex Academy, j'ai essayé de tisser pas mal de liens, de profiter du maximum que ce que je pouvais pas avoir au Congo, à Kinshasa. Tous les networks, vraiment, je travaille comme un fou. Et quand on a 2 ans après, on finit aujourd'hui la Rex Academy, je prends mes valises. J'ai dit à mes amis pendant la fête, on fêtait la fête de l'année quand on a fini, je prends mes valises, c'était à 4h du matin, je dis, les gars, moi je rentre à Kinshasa et tout le monde m'a dit, mais tu es fou. Il y a des gens qui pleuraient quand j'ai montré mon billet, je dis, je retourne. Et c'était un choc parce qu'ils n'étaient pas habitués de voir les Africains qui allaient à la Rex avec tout ce qu'on avait comme privilège de retourner.
So the day after graduation at the Rex Academy, he took a flight at 4 o'clock in the morning, went back home, and the reaction of his colleagues was quite shocking and sad because they're not used to African artists graduating at the big institution and going back home. So yeah, he went back to Kinshasa the following day.
Ok, c'est un peu ça. Il y a eu des modèles aussi au Cameroun comme Godilé qui n'est plus là. C'est des modèles aussi qui nous ont inspirés. Il y a Marilyn qui est là. C'est des modèles qui nous ont inspirés. On a besoin de ces modèles-là. Et je me dis, l'Afrique a besoin de moi, les Congos a besoin de moi. Je ne peux pas commencer qu'à critiquer nos politiciens. Qu'est-ce que moi je fais? Qu'est-ce que je propose pour ces pays-là? C'était de retourner à Kinshasa. Et les gens s'est moqué de moi, mais je dis, bon, quand même, je vais essayer. J'ai commencé les projets étaient dans l'espace mental. En 2010, quand je suis retourné, c'était dans l'espace mental, et du coup, il fallait trouver un espace physique.
So the first step in getting in Kinshasa was to first find I'm not going to say mental space, that sounds weird.
Mental space.
Mental space, yeah, like I
think so.
Mental space. Before we think about the actual physical space, we had to find a structure, like what in our heads are we trying to do.
Ok. Et quand je suis arrivé, il fallait trouver un lieu. Kinshasa, c'est une ville qui coûte, déjà pour trouver un lieu, il fallait l'argent. Et du coup, à la Rex, j'avais fait mes économies parce que j'ai eu vraiment l'opportunité de trouver une galerie à Bruxelles et vendre mes œuvres dans des foires d'art. Et je faisais qu'économiser, acheter de quoi retourner avec à Kinshasa pour commencer ces projets.
So the first challenge in Kinshasa, and I've been there, is a very expensive city. So the first challenge, of course, is financial. And he had been saving and buying some stuff to be able to come home with.
Ok, et sans oublier parce que j'ai une femme qui m'a compris parce que d'autres femmes disaient non, écoute, pourquoi faire avec cet argent cette folie et tout. Elle m'a accompagné. Elle a dit je t'accompagne et tout avec tes idées comme tu as toujours accompagné mes idées. Et on a trouvé un endroit où je payais l'espace. Et après je me suis dit cet argent va finir. Et si je vends pas comme d'habitude, qu'est-ce que je fais? Et du coup, j'ai acheté des taxis, 2 voitures pour faire les taxis. Et chaque mois, j'avais au moins 1000 à 1200 dollars par taxi. Et les 2 taxis, ça faisait 2000 et quelques dollars. Et avec ça, je pouvais louer l'espace et en même temps mettre l'Internet et continuer mon petit rêve.
So to be able to sustain that space, he bought 2 cabs. That's crazy. He bought 2 cabs that are running the city, and both of them would make around $2,000, and he would take the money from the cabs to be able to sustain the place and pay the internet and have the place running.
Et personne ne savait que j'avais ces voitures, sauf ma femme. Et même mes amis, personne n'était au courant. Et moi-même, je prenais un taxi, j'ai continué ma vie. Et les 2 taxis faisaient un peu de business pour cet espace. Et pendant au moins 4 ans, j'ai travaillé comme ça. Et du coup, les gens commençaient à connaître un peu ce qu'on faisait parce que c'était vraiment intense. On allait vraiment vers la qualité de précision avec des artistes, et, en invitant aussi des artistes qui venaient d'autres pays. Guatemala, je cherchais vraiment des artistes qui étaient bons, qui pouvaient partager la même expérience que nous. Et ces artistes que je choisissais, je prenais pas des stars, je prenais des artistes qui sont aussi connus, qui ont de l'expérience, mais qui étaient prêts à partager cette expérience avec moi à Kinshasa.
So after they function like that, like this CAB-sponsored institution for 4 years until eventually the work started being recognized and people started coming in to visit. And with the network that he built with the Rex Academy in Amsterdam, he started inviting people who were like kind of like, I would call them like the underdogs in their own countries, but famous but close to the street. And they started showing their work in Kinshasa, guys from Guatemala and I don't know where
Guatemala,
else.
Cameroon, many different countries, South Africa, invites many artists to come to do some project with us.
Okay.
Yeah, j'étais déjà en anglais, j'ai oublié. Ouais, je disais ceci, après ça, il n'y avait pas qu'un taxi, je suis arrivé à 7 taxis.
Oh, I bought 5 more taxis, so now the 7 taxis running.
Yeah. 7 taxis because when I was selling my work, I was buying taxis.
I can sit if you want. Like.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Je m'excuse. Quand je vendais mes œuvres et après un moment, chaque fois j'achetais des taxis parce que ces taxis faisaient des business pour continuer les projets. Et après un moment, les taxis ne fonctionnaient pas bien. Il fallait créer un autre modèle économique pour continuer à faire fonctionner les projets.
So at some point, well, even after 7 taxis, at some point the taxi was not a sustainable way of financing the institution, so we had to find other ways.
Ok, c'était quoi? J'ai rencontré une amie qui était la femme de l'ambassadeur de l'Union européenne à l'époque. J'ai dit, écoute, tu as beaucoup de contacts, tu as tout un réseau. Tu m'as proposé de faire une expo chez toi à la maison, j'ai refusé, mais j'accepte. À une seule condition, tu as invité tous ces réseaux, même les numéros 2 de la République démocratique du Congo, je sais que tu connais comment faire. On a fait une complicité avec son mari. On a organisé une exposition dont je dis je ne peux pas être le seul, je dois inviter des autres artistes congolais, mais essayer de convaincre 3 partenaires congolais qui peuvent financer cette expo. Et on a trouvé le financement dans moins d'1 heure.
So we chose to be networking, so we tried to organize an exhibition at a friend's house who's very highly placed at her own house, and at the condition that she invites her network, the top deciders, the big guys, the big wallets. So the funds to keep running the institution were collected within an hour.
Et du coup, on a vendu plus de 200 000, je crois, 200 000 euros.
What?
200 000 euros. Et du coup, cet argent, le pourcentage a servi pour la création de l'espace, une autre grande espace, mais en dialoguant avec les gens sur place. I'm sorry, I can try to go fast.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll be here if.
Yes, okay. Yeah, and after to sort this artwork, we serve like we keep 200,000 euro, and this money we get some percentage we put to the project to see how the project we can continue with the project. And at the same time was a great moment to meet different people. They have money in Kinshasa, but I meet one of the guys is the CEO from the big company in Kinshasa, Texas. And they tell me that I like your work, but it's the first time to see your work in really like this. But what I can do for you, I say, we want space. And I challenge during 2 years, and we get this space. It's 2,500 meters square. And when I start to invite people to come to see the space, to support us, I tell me that, Victor, you are crazy. It's too big. I say, okay, I think I have a big dream than this money. You know, I can try to dream big. And after 4 months, and we start to change, to remove the space, because this space was the old factory, fashion textile factory. It started in Kinshasa in 1925, and during the colonial time. But one of the parts it was the pen studio we are using now for Kin Art Studio project. And this space, we have more than 15 studios. And we have a 7 studio we give for artists, Congolese artists, for free to work during 3 years and to follow their work and to invite many people, artists, to come to exchange, to advise them. Last year we invited Barthélemy Togo, we invite the curator of Havana Biennale, we invite many different people to come in Kinshasa to advise artists, to meet there, to exchange with them. And today it's changed a lot because now 2 years we are in this space, and 2 years we try to edit this catalog for young generation of artists. To say the work we are doing is very important to edit catalog. And I finance 50%, and the European Union finance 50% on these catalogs. And in this catalog, you can see these artists, and most of the artists that we're working with them during 7 years, 4 years, now start to be famous. And the artists come to give money to say, okay, Vitra, this we can support the next generation. And we create other projects. We get inspiration from the Rijks Academy. We call it Artists for Artists, how the artists can finance the next generation, because it's good as an artist to ask other people to finance us, but it's also intelligent to think the way we can finance the next generation of artists to be more autonomous. Yeah, I'll go very fast. This, we can see the images of the space. This is the artist studio. You can see the artists have a free internet, have a 56 meter square space. Can have also, we have a free library. The artists can go to the library to read, to do research. We are connecting also with different art centers. In New York, we have some guests also we invite to advise the artist as a curator and also art historian. This is some visits. This is in the studios, artist studio space. All of this is artist studio space. This is our small library. We organize more talk. We invite different people, different guests, architects, artists, art theorician, and this is Barthélemy Togo last year. This, I'll show you very fast because I finished already my minute. But this one is a mobile art gallery. Mobile art gallery is the gallery. We realized that it was important also to create a mobile gallery, to move this gallery to go to the place where the population in Kinshasa don't have access to contemporary art. We invite artists working in this area during 1 or 3 months to create, work with the community, and we exhibit the work in this mobile gallery. You can see how this gallery can be. This is the gallery. This is how we can transform the gallery. We can move it in different places in Kinshasa. Just this is the way of the way we can think differently to work with the space. This is the gallery. We can move everything we put on the small bars and we bring to different places. Yeah, this is a coming project for this year's is Congo Biennale. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vishwa. Thank you very much. So now the final presentation for this afternoon, and then you will kindly guide us on how we proceed, is Cecilia Anderson, who works with UN Habitat. Cecilia works in the branch for planning and design, but public space, and she's been a wonderful supporter of public space development in Nairobi, and I know that because she has interacted with the Go Down continuously. Welcome, Cecilia.
Thank you, Joy. Let me see if I manage all this with the technology. And I'd also like to say thank you very much to Beaux-Arts, to the Kigali Arts Initiative, and also to the City of Kigali. I think this has really been a fabulous inspiration of listening to all these different projects and programs. And I actually have lots of ideas now that I'm going to take back with me. Well, I work with UN Habitat, and for us, when we work with public space, we see public space as the skeleton of the city. So it's really that space where people can actually come out and connect. And I really loved what Carol was saying, that arts and culture brings people together. This is how they connect. And I want to say that public space is that vehicle for actually bringing people together, for connecting people. Because people meet in public spaces. It doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, it doesn't matter your religion, but you meet in public space on an equal basis, and I think that this is really important. And that's why I think that public space is super for the arts and culture. I'm actually just going to give a little bit of background to the process of the work that we've been doing. Then I'm going to have a couple of case studies, and then outline some of those key ingredients, or what we can actually say, what impact those examples have had. Now let me see if I manage this. I'm going to start in a little bit different way. I'd like to say that arts and culture in public space can transform communities. At UN Habitat, we often talk about, and like I was saying, that public space is the skeleton of the city. We often say that about 50% of the built-up area in a city should be dedicated to public space. Public space for us is streets, it's the open public spaces, and it's the public facilities. Now, streets are extremely important. And we're not talking about roads and highways for vehicles, we're talking about streets that people use. It's a source of a livelihood, it's a source that it sort of connects all the open public spaces. And the open public spaces, we're talking about gardens, parks, squares, but it can also be edge spaces around buildings. And of course, public facilities, with the libraries, the market spaces, all these spaces are so important for people to interact. The process that we've actually set up is that we first of all try and support local governments. Our entry point is always local government in assessing the public spaces that they have, to know who uses those spaces and how important they are. The other part is also building relationships or building partnerships between communities and local government. I think local government often find that very difficult in how to build those relationships. And but we see that those relationships are very important to be able to have the sustainability of those projects. Through the assessment, we can also see some of those gaps. What are the gaps? And with those gaps, we can actually support the city in developing a strategy to actually know where they need to put the money, invest the money, to make sure that their city is working for them. So I was telling you about the citywide assessment, helping cities to take stock. And it actually started in Nairobi because the then governor wanted to upgrade 60 public spaces. And for him, the natural thing to do was actually to choose the ones that were in the central business district. And we were saying, but maybe you need to actually know what public spaces you have, who uses those spaces, to be able to know which ones you need to invest in. So we started with a citywide assessment of public space. But before we started, we went to the Department of Environment, who manages those public spaces, and asked them, how many public spaces do they manage? They told me 5. 5 public spaces were the ones that they managed. And we were like, no, but I think there's so many more public spaces than 5 in the city of Nairobi. We actually mapped 4,500 spaces at the end of our mapping. And I think that's really important because the city is only managing the 5 big ones, but all those other spaces are so important to the people. In Wuhan in China, we actually mapped one of the districts, and it's a district along the Yangtze River. It has a history of 1,800 years, so it's a really old part. And the city wanted us to map all the heritage elements within that district. I think it's about 1 million people living in Wuchang. And the idea was for them to be able to protect those spaces and that heritage from development. As you probably all know, development in China is actually very difficult for a lot of local governments to manage. But the city of Wuhan really wants to take that very seriously. So we mapped all the different spaces, we mapped what activities were taking place in those spaces, and which were historical streets, historical buildings. So now they actually have a database of that. And that is then to inform this strategy of how to be able to protect those spaces. I was also talking about upgrading public spaces, and I don't know, how many of you know about Minecraft? Yep. I know, kids love it, hey? Yeah? Any of the young students there in the back heard of Minecraft? Well, we actually found that often when you want to upgrade a space, it was really difficult to engage with people. You can bring maps, you can have focus groups, and that sort of brings some sort of ideas out. But when people can start building themselves, and I know this is a room of architects, and I know thinking about Minecraft and building with 1 meter by 1 meter blocks is really horrible because you can't do circles. But for people that are building, it really doesn't matter because it's just the ideas. They want to get the ideas down. And it really works with young people, but also with old people. So we actually found that that was a really nice way of engaging people in designing spaces. So I told you I was going to talk about a couple of case studies. I wanted to talk about Surabaya, which is a city in Indonesia with a very progressive mayor. And we've been working in 2 spaces there. One is Ketandan, and the other is Kiputi. And Ketandan it's sort of a low-income area, quite dense, sort of very narrow lanes, and the community there, when they were asked what it was they were actually needed with regards to public space, they wanted a space where they could meet. And the traditional way of doing that is in what they call a joglo. It's just a little roof over a space that they used to use. So this was the joglo in Ketandan, in that area, and they said this is what we actually want to upgrade. So together with the community, it was really driven by the community. Everybody came out to start building that joglo. And so the guys were there, the kids were there painting, and this is the final joglo at the end, which has really become a community space where everybody meets. This is the mayor of Surabaya, she's launching it at that time. But it's really also a cultural space. We had a comedian in the room earlier who was emceeing us, but for them the theatre and comedy, or comedy theatre, is very important. So, this space was really used for that, but also being able to impart that to the children. So you're actually teaching the kids in the community an art form that they have. The other space is Kiputi, and it actually was an old dump site, and it's on the outskirts of Surabaya. And so this is actually the transformation of Kiputi. We had a Minecraft workshop working with the community around it, and what they wanted to see was a space that they could have art, culture, that young people could use, that children could come and play. It's still work in progress, but as you can see, there's a small amphitheater, which was very important for meetings, but also to be able to have different events. This is the old incinerator, and that's going to be transformed into a space for young people to be able to do their art, music, but also have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spin on it. I also wanted to talk a little bit about One Kiem district in Hanoi in Vietnam, where we've been working with our Habitat office and the city there as well. And this is really to transform a street. And the street was next to this sort of, it's a big wall with all these arches. And it had become a parking space. That's where all the sort of the little motorbikes and the cars were parking. And on the other side, where that parking space is here. And it's really sort of it's a street where there's lots of food, and the food comes out onto the street, so it's very lively in the evenings. But the idea was really to transform it, and so there were artists from that area that came and painted each of the arches. And that space has now completely been transformed into a space that people are using, and they're doing their different dances. They even had a fashion show. It's become that space that people just come to enjoy looking at the art and having other exhibitions as well. So that's why streets are so important, because that's also that space that you know people often forget that is very important for people to use. Another one that I actually wanted to talk about is Dandora in Nairobi, and Joy knows that very well. Dandora was a sites and services project built in the 1970s, and it's just next to the big dump site in Nairobi. Now, the dump site used to be on the outskirts, but now the dump site is completely surrounded with residential area. And Dandora is one of the spaces that, or one of the areas next to the dump site. And the sites and services, this is the street. And the project here was really working together with the youth and the community to transform the street. And for them, it was really important, the identity of Dandora, because Dandora was known as a criminal haven, am I right, Joy? If people heard that you came from Dandora, they started to feel, where's my wallet? But they've really managed to transform the space. It's amazing. So this is the space, but for them, color was really important. So each of the courtyards going off the street was the color. So each courtyard has its own color. But I also wanted to say that the street here is really not for cars. There are no cars on that street. It's for kids to play. On Saturdays, they actually bring out a screen and show movies, so it's just full of kids sitting on the street. And I think this is the important thing, is that you can actually make those spaces really important spaces. There was building party. Everybody joined in to do the painting of the courtyards. So now there's a sort of pride in that area, and it's completely turned around the whole feeling of going to Dandora and being in that area, and even actually for Dandorans to feel that pride in their own neighborhood. But I also wanted to talk about something that we were doing in Nairobi as well, which is sort of these temporary ways of trying to engage people to come together. And Joy's been doing a lot of that, actually, with the Nainihu. But we actually started also with the city of Nairobi to try and transform streets and to close off a street for a short period of time so that people could actually feel what it was like to bring out different activities into the street and transform it. So we did sort of a placemaking week. And it was amazing how many artists that came in from the different communities around Nairobi to do music, to do painting, to do yoga, and it really became that place where people met. So it's all about, trying to transform those places and bring back the streets and the public spaces for the people. And using actually art and creative ways of doing that. I also wanted to talk about how important art and culture is, and I think Dandora is just proof of that, how it can actually boost poor and disadvantaged communities, both socially, you're building that social cohesion, also economically, because the youth in Dandora are also earning a bit of money as well in providing security and cleaning up the neighborhood, and the people there are actually happy to do that now. We're talking about arts and culture as a way of leading change and building communities. When you look at public space and people come out to meet, it's not so much the space in itself. It's actually the activation, the programming, what is actually taking place in that space. It's also the management of that space, because if you don't have if it's not managed well, then people will also avoid it. And art and culture is a significant player because it brings those people together and it brings that sense of identity and belonging, which is so important. What we've also seen is through art and culture, you can actually bring those networks of partners and activists together, which is also really important for being able to sustain initiatives in the long run. But finally, my final word, a lot of this is not possible if you can't bring local government on board. It's the most difficult thing, but really to be able to sustain a lot of those initiatives, it's very good to have local government blessings and support to be able to do that. They might not always have the resources, but at least they can give you the commitment to be able to do it, like with Joy. And I just wanted to leave you with this picture from Hoi An in Vietnam, which is, you can actually do an art installation that can also become a playground for kids. And I think this is also, how you can use art in a different way. And it's not anything that costs very much. It's just a few poles that have been painted by an artist. But for the kids and for the people that are using that space, it's actually become very important. And with that, I'd like to say thank you.
Thanks so much, Cecilia, and you're exactly on time. Spot on. Okay, good. So I think, first of all, to just appreciate that batch of presenters. We started with Joe, and then we went to, who was next? We had Vishwa, Marilyn was earlier. Yeah. And then, of course, we've got Cecilia. We were hoping that we could now engage all of the speakers, both those before and after the tea break. And I think that now I will actually ask, what does time look like? Because I know we're trying to walk to the university, and then we're very late. Okay, so what is the proposal here? What can we get there? Can we do 2 questions, 2 burning somethings? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so folks, we know who the speakers were. We have an opportunity to probably do 2 or 3, I'm pushing it now, just burning questions or comments, just so that we can get some feedback. So if you look through, I can read them out actually, just so that you know who you spoke to. So this afternoon you listened to, very quickly, you listened to the Go Down, you listened to Beaux-Arts, Douala, Freedom Park, and then you also listened to the Aki Africa Cafe. Yes, there was Dutch, the Kinart Studio, and then the presentation that Cecilia has just made with those case studies. So if there's any hands or comments, please put your hand up. We'll bring the mic to you, and then we can do a quick engagement around that. Any hands? I know now that time is pressing, nobody's going to put up their hand. For a question or a comment? Yeah, okay, so we've got 1 hand over there, and we've got 2 hands. Okay, so let's take those 2. Shall I defer to the young lady first, because I didn't see enough women doing things today?
So my name is Modesta, and I have a pretty concrete question for you. And you may have, spoke to it, and I missed that out, so sorry. So my question is, how do you go about getting the blessing from the local government? If you could give maybe a specific example. There you go.
Yeah, just like I was saying, it's actually not that easy. And I think for us, it's often been that you need to find that linkage of their interest. So, for example, in Nairobi, at that time, the governor, now it's a different governor, now it's a different case. But the governor at that time, I think he saw the value of actually investing in public space. And he saw that it was really important for the people. And I think he also saw it as a way that, it's a visible way of actually gaining a little bit more political mileage from the people. So I think sometimes it's all about packaging and how you package it for local government. I think that often you do find that there is an interest in government. They don't always have resources, but they are interested in partnering. They're interested in finding partners that can help them to manage, can help them to upgrade a space. Sometimes they don't have all the technology for doing it. So, it's all about partnering, but providing them with that platform, giving them the platform of partners. I think what tires a lot of local governments is actually having visits from 50 different projects and initiatives. But if you can create a platform that meets on a regular basis all these partners together, with the local government, say once a month or something like that, then I think that's a lot of value added, because they really find that, when you bring all those partners together, that they can see how they can actually, that person has experience in developing playgrounds in disadvantaged communities. Somebody else might know how to engage with private sector. So it's all bringing these different stakeholders together. But not too often, once a month, and then, actually working on that. But then the local government also needs to be clear and say, this is our vision that we have, and this is what we would like you to support us in, which is also not very easy all the time.
Thank you so much.
So the reason why I'm running around with the microphone is to make sure it goes where it's supposed to go.
Ma question est en français. J'aimerais savoir, on a posé une question quand on était sur le panel. Cette question, je voudrais la faire revenir. C'est question de l'espace. Je me rappelle que c'est Marlene qui avait posé cette question, mais la question est restée sans réponse. Je voudrais qu'on revienne à cette question. On discute au sujet de l'espace. Quel espace s'agit-il? Est-ce l'espace physique? Est-ce l'espace environnemental, émotionnel? Parce que, d'après les présentations de tout à l'heure, tout revient à la question de quel espace s'agit-il. Je ne sais pas qui va répondre à cette question. Ça, c'est une première constatation. Je voudrais aussi revenir à la présentation de Aida. Hongera sana mama. Presentation yako ilikuwa safi sana. Umeweza kugusa kuneno hizo mbili. Kwanza ukazungumza kwa mnazi mmoja. Pili ukazungumza kwa askari monument. Inaonekana kama environment ya Dar es Salaam inarembesha sana usanii. Asante. Ni comment, ila ilikuwa ni kusudi utoke hapa na umezungumza Kiswahili. Ujisikie kama uko nyumbani. Asante.
That's okay. So quickly, his question was, and it's a question that was asked before by Marilyn, and he thinks that it was never answered. We're here discussing the idea of a space. What kind of space are we talking about? Is it the physical? Is it the environment? Is it the environmentally friendly, the emotionally friendly for the artist? For who is it? And emotionally, and he doesn't know who is going to answer that question, but he feels like that question hasn't been answered. It's only the first day, Tonton.
And I think that's correct, that it is actually only the first day in a sense. And I think Kigali has got a lot of exciting conversations to have. Okay, so I'm going to be naughty and just take one more.
Jesus. Okay, he was congratulating her for the Swahili part. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My name is Karekezi Parfait. I'm from Rwanda Housing Authority. I just want to thank all the presenters. They have made very good presentations. And my first question goes to...
There's a second?
No, yeah, just small, it will take 30 seconds. Okay. The first one is from UN Habitat, the presentation. It was Cecilia, it was very interesting and presentation. For as here in Rwanda, we are still having this issue of informal settlement upgrading. When we are upgrading our informal settlement, still this cultural space, people are still having this idea of demolishing and making beautiful buildings and going high and everything. But your experience there, I wish you to give us some tips of how we can handle this, can say, modern ideas of upgrading spaces by not forgetting this cultural identity. The second one was for our Aida. For Dasalam. Aida, thank you. I have been very impressed by what you have done in Dar es Salaam, but one question that came in my mind is to know exactly, we still have, can say, issue of identification of what are we talking when we are talking about culture, I can say, architecture heritage, because sometimes we came to two things which are conflicting, our culture as like your culture, Tanzanian culture, and your history. Two things which are conflicting. And I wish to know, when you are about to preserve your culture or something that happened, is it to preserve, can I say, the history or something that reflecting your real culture, Tanzanian culture? Okay, so I wish to know exactly what is happening, because sometimes we want to preserve something, but sometimes we found that it's a bad history that we want to preserve, which is not something everybody is pushing and want to understand. Thank you.
Maybe we'll have Ida respond first.
Okay, I'll try and answer it as clearly as I can. So when Dutch was formed, the focus was on buildings and open spaces and monuments. And as you've rightly said, you know, we have a colonial history that we carry with us. And the thing about history, you have good and you have bad. So what do you choose to carry forward? So this is a question that as citizens, we need to agree and we need to decide. But in order to have a legacy and in order to have a footprint, sometimes the unpleasant history has to be part of your heritage. So we have buildings from the German era, we have buildings from the British era, and we have buildings from the Omani era as well. When we talk about Swahili culture, what do we mean? It is a combination of Arab, of Bantu, and Swahili itself is 40% Arabic. So, you know, where do you draw the line? But for us, what we feel is that it is important to record and document history. If it happens to be in a building because certain events took place, the old Boma is the oldest building. So the Omani started it, taken over by the British, by the Germans, then the British. And then after independence, it was handed over to the Tanzanian government. So there is a footprint of our history in there. It may involve a shared heritage, but it's still an aspect of our heritage. So yes, it is a bit controversial, and some may choose to say, well, you know, I don't see how that has anything to do with us. But you can't pick and choose aspects of your history that you're going to save and aspects that you're going to discard. The important thing is, it is still heritage, and we need to document it, and we need to keep the legacy alive and known. And it is for the future generation. We can't have gaps simply because it was unpleasant. I don't know if I've addressed your question.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Ida. And now I shall do a bit of exercise.
This is a joke.
Yes. There we go, slum upgrading, best practice.
we often talk about that, to be able to, when you're upgrading, the important thing is also to keep the fabric, so the streets and the spaces, because a lot of the time you'll find that when you're upgrading, that, all those spaces that are used commonly, or the common spaces, are often then built on. Now, the project that I showed you in Dandora was actually one of those projects where they would find that all of a sudden, in a courtyard, there's a high-rise building that has been built. So it was actually only having that champion on the ground, and it's a shame he's not here. His name's Charles Gachanga, and he was amazing to actually, start negotiating with these people that were actually grabbing the land and building high-rise, telling them that, you shouldn't do this here. It wasn't the government that was doing it. It was this champion on the ground, living in the community. He was from Dandora, but he said that we need those spaces for our children, for our young people to have. Sometimes you need to find that champion. But also when it comes to upgrading, I think it often comes that let's build high-rise apartments, the tower in the park kind of thing. And we've actually done calculations in Habitat that there's no need to actually build high-rise and in a park. If you build blocks, 3-4 stories high, something like that, but you can still have these blocks with an inner courtyard and an outer streets, a little bit like, I think Barcelona is a good example of this. But if you calculate, you can actually get the same number of apartments into a block like that as in a high-rise building of, say, maybe 16 floors or something like that. So we've actually done those calculations of trying to sort of keep the fabric of the city a little bit more low-rise, making it more the city at eye level, which is actually very important. So, when you're moving around the city, you don't want to have all these high-rise and fences that actually don't get you to linger in those spaces. You actually want to have those spaces on the ground floor where you will entice people to linger. You will entice people to use those spaces. It can be along the streets, it can be in plazas, but just that, thinking a little bit differently and not actually maybe adopting a lot of the mistakes that we've done in many other countries.
Great, thank you. And folks, that is it. Can we appreciate all of the presenters this afternoon?
Yes, please.
And appreciate yourselves as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. A big round of applause to Joy, please. As we come to the end of today, first day of this forum, just a quick series of information. We are about to, now, we've talked about the artists like the whole day. Now we should let them speak. And we have a series of events that are happening within these 2 days. Tomorrow night is going to be Nyege Nyege at One Love. We shall organize how we get there for those of you who want to boogie. And there's also the Mashariki Film Festival happening, and my friend here with quite an attire will hand a couple, that's Regis by the way, we'll handle a couple of invitations for those who are interested and will still be around after the forum. As for yes? Excuse me? I know, that's what I just... As for tonight, we have an exhibition next door. We just take a walk a bit. It's not far from here. We're going to be ushered by these fine gentlemen from Rwanda Art Center. And the person who's going to take you there is my man, Lion King.
I tried to recall what my name is, but I can't. It's maybe because I grew up in a crazy family. My dad was not the type who will tell your dreams. My mom was always obsessed in her things. Brothers and sisters always drank by the streets. It was just too cliche enough. You wouldn't tell what was beneath the lies, beneath the smiles, beneath the lies. Though sometimes I would just smirk to make me feel alright. But besides that, where will I start? Facing the old guy, telling him I wanted to rap. He wouldn't understand. In fact, he would just laugh, look at me straight in the eyes, tell me, go refresh your mind, kid. So I got down to it. What else will I do? However legit I tried to be, I would still look like a fool. So I went off the deep end. It started to deepen, thinking that I was mad. I looked into my sister's eyes, and in I saw the darkness covering up the madness. Despite of the happy times, the darkness remained inside. No way to get it out. Frightened by the past, I could hear her voice just from the background, with echoes, and only echoes of pain, hitting her from all angles, eating up her brain. She prays that maybe she becomes that one grain that fell on the fertile soil so that she can germinate. Well, for my brothers, life one isn't even the same. More strange, more dense, always yearning for the fame. Take breakfast, taking tea, bread, and sometimes cocaine, but it didn't quench the thirst. Life remained a mystery, and sometimes they called it a curse.
Thank you. That's Lion King. You're gonna see him more and more. Yes, please go ahead.
I'm called Lion King. I'm a poet, and I come from transpoesis, which means transformation through poetry. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and see you soon.